Yes. All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Thursday, April 18th, 2024 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. And first thing I'd like to do is actually rearrange our agenda just slightly. At the request of one of our applicants, we're going to postpone a hearing, the second public hearing, to May 16th. So I need a motion to change the agenda first. Thank you. A second.
I'll second.
Thanks. Any discussion? All in favor?
I think we're all in favor.
All right, and then next I need a motion to postpone the hearing of 24-10, 6 Opening Hill Road and Indigo Trail to our May 16th, 2024 meeting. That's at the request again of the applicant.
I'll provide a motion.
Thanks.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
All right, so because we do have one other public hearing this evening, I'd like to read a few notes about the process. During the public hearing, the applicant will be invited to present the application, explaining to the commission and others present what is being requested. The applicant or staff will share all application materials on the screen as needed. Comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. There will be clarifying questions from the commissioners. Then there will be an opportunity for clarifying questions from attendees. For Zoom attendees, we've got a check. Please raise your hand through the Zoom platform and wait to be called on and unmuted. As this public hearing must be recorded, attendees will state their names. Thank you. There you go. State their names each time they speak with their name and address. The applicant will then have an opportunity to address any questions or concerns raised by the public or commissioners. Once the public hearing is closed, the applicant is free to leave or remain for the balance of the regular meeting, during which the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has a right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. Decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Land Use Department at 203-245-5631 after 9 a.m. All actions taken tonight by the commission will be by roll call. All commissioners and staff will identify themselves for the record before speaking. Seated this evening, we have John Duza, Bob Reinhardt, John Morgan, myself, Carol Snow Chair, Mike Bugda, Bob O'Connor, and our staff town planner, Aaron Mannix. Don't think we have anyone attending on the commission by Zoom.
No.
This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube and will be made available on the town website for viewing. Additionally, I would like to ask that we treat each other respectfully throughout the meeting, and a reminder to please turn off your cell phones. Aaron, do you need to read the legal notice? This is a continuation of the public hearing from March 21st for 24-06, 1339 and 1341 Boston Post Road.
No, it was read into the record of the first
Okay.
opening.
So in that case, I invite the applicant to come forward and share updates. I think there have been a few revisions flying around.
Yes, Jeffrey Beatty for the applicant, 1339 and 1341 Boston Post Road, or BPR LLC, 20 Water Street, both is my address. There have been a few revisions from following last month's meeting, and we've also received comments from town staff that we'd like to respond to. One thing that I would like to enter into the record is a copy of I mentioned it when we met last month, there's a common access and parking easement agreement that's of record on the land records between the owners of the properties at 1333 Boston Post Road, 1339 Boston Post Road, 1341 Boston Post Road, 1343 Boston Post Road, and 1347 Boston Post Road, which were collectively known as the marketplace, or other than 1333, the others were. And so I've got a copy of the common access and parking agreement that was executed in 2007 and recorded on the Madison land record. So I've got extra copies I'd like to submit one for the record and some others to the other.
We don't have that, I don't think we have that uploaded yet.
Not digitally.
Site.
No, I can email that to you.
Okay, great.
Yep, we can scan it.
You,
You got it. Yep. So this is an agreement that was executed following the approval of the application in 2004. And it also, it was executed by all of the property owners that allows them to have access off of the Boston Post Road onto the areas, travel within the properties and park in common with each other over all of the properties. So if you, I don't expect you to read through the agreement right now, but if you were to read through the agreement right now, you would see that the customers and the owners, the customers of 1333, if they needed to, could park on 1347 and vice versa. 1343 could park on 1339. And the idea is that it was a wide range of parking options for the people who would be coming to visit the site. And so referenced in that agreement is a data accumulation plan, which, although the agreement says it was to be filed with the town clerk, it hasn't been. So I was able to secure a copy of it, and I'd like to introduce that as well. And I'll send you a digital copy of that.
what's the date of that?
It's 2007.
And what is that?
This is a data accumulation plan that's referenced in the agreement.
What is data accumulation?
Pardon?
What is a data accumulation plan?
It's a survey based on that was conducted by Engineering and Associates. I've got another copy that I'll happily share with you.
And this extends all the way past the Cullen Vegas from the Hammoness liquor store.
Exactly. And so that agreement is of record on the land records, and it's an agreement that was reached between the owners of the package store, 1339, 1341, 1343, and 1347. The other aspect that we've changed following our last meeting, one of the aspects is the height of the building. We've reduced them from 45 feet average height to 41 feet average height. And I'm going to have Mr. Matthews speak to that in a few minutes. And then I'd like to have Mr. Ott speak to the comments that he's received from the members from the staff and his responses to them in contact with fire department and with the health department since we've met last. So I'll turn it over to Mike Ott at this point.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summer Hill Civil Engineers here in town on Wall Street. We received comments from the town's fire marshal as well as the assistant fire chief. They asked that we try to widen the driveway behind the 1341 building, which is identified on our drawings as building 2, from 16 feet to 20 feet. We did that and submitted a revised plan to the fire marshal yesterday for his review. We've not submitted it into the application record yet. It's still in review with the fire marshal, but we were able to adjust the width from 16 feet to 20 feet. He also asked, he had some concern about fire apparatus and their ability to enter and exit the site, as well as get around the site through the parking lot drive lanes. SLR, our traffic engineer, has completed a turning movement analysis that we just received this afternoon. It's been sent to Aaron, but the fire marshal has not been able to see it yet. Neil Alinsky is here from SLR. And when he talks about their traffic impact study, I think he's ready to go over that turning movement analysis also. The turning movement analysis does show that fire apparatus can enter and exit the site and maneuver through the drive lanes of the parking area. The only other comments we received were from the Director of Health. We received them yesterday afternoon and sent in responses this morning. I don't think that those comments are completely resolved yet, but we'll continue working with the town's health department. I believe those are all the staff comments that we've received to date. And be glad to try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? I mean, we haven't had a chance, obviously, to see these updates. I did read the health department response, and it didn't seem quite clear that you've really answered everything thoroughly or worked it all out. So do you have any idea, Mike, when that might be resolved?
I don't, but there's time, of course, in the application, the time clock to do it. Like I said, we received the comments yesterday afternoon, and we responded early this morning before the opening of business, but we'll have to work with the health department to resolve those comments.
Yeah. And I presume the 20-foot width change is to accommodate ingress and egress of fire trucks and emergency vehicles. Is that the intent?
It was actually, when I talked to the fire marshal, I asked him specifically why he needed the 20-foot width, whether it was for, traffic flow purposes or operational purposes. He said it was for operational purposes. They want the width to be able to have an apparatus parked in the drive lane and to get another vehicle or apparatus around that one. That was his reason.
Interesting.
So, Mike, when I looked at what I hope was the latest version, it seemed like as best I could tell, some of the lanes were less than 20 feet. The one I'm thinking of in particular was behind, is that building 2 up there? The one that's parallel to Cottage Road?
1341?
Yeah, 13. Behind 13. The parking area behind 1341, it seemed like I think it was back that as 18 feet space. I'm trying to remember specifically, but was that 20 feet carried throughout between the building and a parked car to allow access?
So you broke up a little, but I think I got your question. So on the original plans before we made the revision for the fire marshal, all parking lot drive lanes are 24 feet wide, with the exception of the one-way drive lane behind and parallel to the 1341 building where we have angled parking. That was only 16 feet in width. That's the drive that the fire marshal asked us to widen to 20.
So is that now widened to 20?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
Is that now 20 feet wide, that drive?
It is, yes. And we, as I was saying, we submitted that plan with the 20-foot width to the fire marshal yesterday.
This is not the site development plan.
No, I know, but the one
Okay.
I looked at
Correct.
yesterday and today.
It didn't
doesn't have that.
reflect that change yet.
Right.
Yes.
Correct. And Madam Chair, Neil Olinsky from SLR is here as well, as a panelist,
Okay,
to go through the traffic impact report as well.
okay, great.
If there aren't any other questions
Any
for
other
Mike
questions, or should
at this
we move
time.
on?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I have questions.
thank you.
Neil, can you hear us? Oh, here he comes.
I can, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. All right. I'll go through the traffic report. So for the record, my name is Neil Olinsky, and I'm with SLR Consulting. I'm actually filling in tonight for Dave Sullivan, who couldn't make it. He's off for the rest of the week. But he did the traffic study. We did the traffic study for this development. And that's what I'm going to go through. So, as you can expect, one of the first things you guys, I'm sure, and everybody is always curious with regarding developments and traffic studies. One of the first things everybody wants to know, how much new traffic any development could be expected to generate. So what we did, like we do in many projects, is we looked at a resource called the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, which is essentially a large compilation of statistics on the number of trips, vehicle trips, and other types of trips that could be expected from different types of land uses and developments of different sizes. So we looked at that and we crunched the stats. For a development of this size and this type, this mix of uses, we're estimating that it would be expected to generate approximately 16 entering trips and 16 exiting trips during the single peak hour in the morning on a typical weekday. During an afternoon peak hour, estimating it would generate around 55 new entering trips and 44 new exiting trips. That would be during the PM peak hour on a weekday. On a Saturday peak hour, a little bit more, estimates are approximately 54 new entering vehicle trips and 50 new exiting vehicle trips. In addition to that, there's expected to be a tad more additional traffic, what we call pass-by trips, which are folks who are already passing by on Post Road, who would, in the future with this development, simply turn in to grab something quick, for example, at a store, or pick up food and to exit and be on their way onto their ultimate destination. So that's the amount of new traffic, and pass-by traffic could be a little bit more, and that's what we're estimating. That's really the first step of a traffic study. Second step is to estimate which direction the new trips would be coming and going from. In our traffic study, we're estimating vast majority would be on Post Road Route 1. We estimated 55% would be routed to and from the west via Post Road, 40% to and from the east on Post Road, and a small amount, around 5%, to and from the west via Cottage Road. Then really our third step in a traffic study is we estimate, we do traffic counts really of the roadway traffic out there to know and quantify how much roadway traffic is out there now, actually. We had counts done in February on a Friday, I believe a Friday and a Saturday in February at the site driveways and the intersections with Cottage Road and Dudley on Route 1. So we had those done in February, and then we seasonally adjusted those to reflect warmer weather when traffic's a bit higher in this area. And then what we did is we estimate what is called the future background traffic profile, which is a future projection of the roadway traffic just before this development would be expected to open. We projected out to year 2027 for our background traffic. And in addition to the seasonal adjustment, we increased the traffic counts further based on a growth rate that was provided by CONDOT that they suggested we use. And we added in trips from 3 other area developments that are expected to open between now and then. That resulted in our future background traffic. And then really the second to last step is we added in this new development's traffic to estimate the future build or combined traffic profile. And then the final step is we do a traffic flow analysis where we essentially model these study intersections. We model the traffic flow of these study intersections with versus without this development in place in order to identify any potential traffic impacts specific to this development. That's what we did. What we found in our traffic analysis is with or without this development, our study intersections are expected to operate at level of service C, peak hour level of service C or better. That's with or without this development. On a scale of A to F, with level of service A being essentially no traffic delays or congestion at all, and level of service F being heavy congestion, level of service C is quite good all things considered. So in the future, with or without this development, level of service C, really very little, if any, perceptible traffic impacts from the new traffic from this development is what we're expecting. As Mike mentioned, we looked at the fire truck maneuverability, which I'll show some exhibits about that in a minute. Another step we looked at in our traffic study, we looked at sight lines at the driveways, and we found that they will meet state guidelines. The speed data out there indicates that I think the average and posted speeds are actually the average and 85th percentile speeds out there on Route 1 are quite comparable to the posted speed limit of 45 miles per hour. I think sightline criteria, state guidance criteria is 500 feet of sight distance based on those speeds, and those are expected to be met. Continued in the future, really what you need to do is just maintain general maintenance and mowing of grass and things like that, and vegetation along the frontage to ensure that the sight lines are maintained into the future. So that is our traffic study in a nutshell, but I'd like to share my screen to show some PDFs, if I can find them on my computer here, of the fire truck maneuverability, just so everybody can see those. I don't know why I'm not seeing the PDFs. Apologies for the delay.
Do you want me to share them, Neil? I might be able to find them.
Yeah, if you don't mind, that would be
Yep.
great.
Yep, just give me one second.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I'm not seeing it. Emails.
I think I've got the first one, Neil, if the commission can see my screen.
Oh,
Yes.
Yep. I can see it.
Okay.
So we actually did 6 exhibits or figures showing the fire truck, a fire truck, the largest fire truck that we were told, largest size fire truck, maneuvering through the site almost in every different way, essentially. This is one of the exhibits showing a fire truck turning left into the site at the new westerly driveway, and actually going be counterclockwise, sort of meandering all the way through the site. And as can be shown, he's really not, the fire truck, half of the fire truck is expected to be adequately accommodated without going over any curbing or anything like that. Really, the site is designed adequately to accommodate the fire truck. I don't know if it's worth everybody's time to go through the other exhibits. They're sort of just other permutations of this. But that's really it. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Neil, did you look at having the fire trucks go through with parked vehicles along the way, which is what it sounded like the fire marshal was asking for?
We didn't look at a scenario if a car was parked in a drive aisle. We assumed the cars would be parked in regular parking spaces. You know, with fire trucks obviously having sirens and horns, presumably someone who's in a drive aisle who might be in the way is behind the wheel and would just move out of the way for a fire truck, as would be expected pretty much anywhere. That's what we did.
And the state guidelines that you refer to are only applicable to the Boston Post Road aspect of the site, is that correct?
The state guidelines are essentially universal in the U.S. at least. You can use the state guidelines for site distances on local roads as well, not just state roads.
So my question would then be, is that applicable to the road that's north of the site?
Cottage Road?
Yeah, Cottage Road.
I would say so. We didn't specifically look at that because, if I'm not mistaken, and again, I'm filling in, so I don't know all the details, but I don't think we're changing any of the driveway. Is there a driveway on Cottage Road now, Mike? Apologies for not.
There is from the adjoining parcels to the east, but
Right.
you're correct, Neil. We're not modifying any of those existing.
We're not modifying it, exactly. Since it's an existing driveway, we assumed it was already designed many years ago and built according to standards, so we didn't look at it newly for our study.
Okay, and your traffic modeling, I assume, takes into account, is it 12 condos that are in there? Is that correct?
Wellington?
The
It's,
residence here
Yeah,
proposed,
yeah.
24 units.
24
I
units.
think it's 24.
24 units, I'm sorry, it was 12 per building. Is what I was thinking.
Yeah,
24 units, a restaurant, and a number of retail stores all at the same time, correct?
That's correct, assuming the full build. Mhm.
Are there any impacts that you had to consider with regard to the package store or Cohen's Bagels at both extremes, or is that not applicable to this model?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear all of your.
So does the model accommodate the fact that there's a package store to the west and Cohen's Bagels to the east, where there will now be cross traffic?
Well, I could say we counted the driveways, so the existing traffic from the package store and other shops and stores was captured and is reflected in our traffic study because it was part of the traffic counts that were done.
Okay.
other questions?
Yeah.
Neil.
Neil, hi, I'm Bob Reinhardt. I have a couple of questions in no particular order. I think in the analysis, the ins and outs on Boston Post are on that driveway across from 1343 primarily. I remember looking at the maps of those making rights and lefts.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last.
So the question is, which driveways are being utilized the most for the increased traffic?
Let me show, I could probably, well, again, I'm having trouble sharing the screen. In our study, we're really showing the new traffic in this development going, really using 3 driveways, 3 access points. The new westerly one, the easterly driveway, and the driveway that exists on Cottage Road. So not just a single driveway. We're estimating the new traffic would be using all the site driveways, essentially, all the main ones.
Okay, and so the next question then is, I didn't get to read the whole report, there's a lot there, so I tended to look at the
pages.
I tended to look at the pictures. And mostly the pictures with the arrows that showed the traffic flow, the expected flows going in and out and passing and from which direction, which is very informative. One of the takeaways I had was that the overall traffic was including the expected traffic from
I know the one development's the Wellington, but there are two other developments, I think I read, in that general area.
Correct.
So if you think of just the Wellington and those two others, is that included in the as is now? And then the increase is just from this development, or is the increase from all now 4 developments from what it is today?
So the-
to- I'm
Mhm.
trying to tease out how many more cars are coming just from this as opposed to the stuff that hasn't been built yet, or it's not done yet.
Right. When we look at just our impacts, we're looking at just the traffic from this development.
Okay, so the.
So we could
baseline
consider the other.
includes- The baseline includes all the other developments underway. Okay,
That's correct. Hmm.
okay. So, is there a way? I don't know if you have this data on this, you might not. Is there a way to understand the impact on the traffic flow from as it is today to as it will be when all 4 developments are completed? I'm trying to understand what difference is going to be between driving down the road. If I go down there today, what's it like versus what it'll be like in 2 years?
Hmm.
So
There is a way
Okay,
yes, there is a way. We didn't necessarily look at that specifically in our study, but we could do that. There is, so essentially what we did in our study, the background we combined and analyzed. We analyzed 2 scenarios. One of which is what is called the background or no build traffic scenario,
yeah,
which includes these other developments.
right.
And then the combined is the next step, which includes this development. Rewinding, I guess, we could analyze essentially a third, what is not really a scenario, but the third condition, which is the existing conditions, which doesn't have any of these developments in place, which should just be the existing traffic volume seasonally adjusted. We didn't do that in our study, but we could. You know, I don't think it would make a huge difference in our ultimate findings, but we could analyze that. It wouldn't change the fact that we're estimating with all these developments in place, level of service C or better. That wouldn't change. It would just be a matter of what are the levels of service now? Are they A's or B's or C's, or are they all B's and C's? At the end of the day, A through C is all quite good. It's all quite good. Once you get to D's and E's, you start getting worried about congestion and traffic delays and things like that. But I think the fact that with this development in place, plus the other area developments that we're expecting level of service C, is all quite good. Sorry, that was a rambling response, but I hope I.
That was actually, that's the way I was thinking anyway, so your rambling worked perfect with my brain. And so what I'm trying to get to is an understanding of so your analysis shows the impact on Boston Post Road is going to be fine. It's a C or better, so it hits the standards that you need to try to keep traffic flowing. My question is on Cottage Road, what is the change in the traffic pattern on Cottage Road as an accumulative change from all of these developments that have been put in place? So I know the egress, I guess, on the Wellington is pretty far down at the very beginning of Cottage Road. I don't know what the expected traffic pattern out of that was.
And what the gross incremental would be.
Right, so have we, by allowing the traffic to go in and out on Cottage Road for this development, have we reached the point of overwhelming Cottage Road? It's a pretty small road.
Not in very good shape.
Yeah, not very good shape. So that's what I'm trying to get to is Boston Post is fine. State Road, fine. It's the small side roads. Trying to understand how the traffic is changing there, even though it hasn't changed yet. You've got 4 new developers now coming in.
It's gonna.
Yeah, it's going to. So I'd just like to understand that. Maybe it's just that.
I think the key thing to remember, I guess for me to hammer home is that I think, if I'm not mistaken, we analyze and estimate that the vast majority of traffic in this development is naturally going to want to use Boston Post Road. 95% of which, because it's just simply going to be the fastest and shortest, quickest route to get anywhere to and from the site. We estimated, I think, 5% of the new trips from this development using Cottage Road, primarily or almost all to and from the west. So not a heck of a lot of traffic at the end of the day. We analyzed specifically traffic flow at the intersection of Cottage Road and Route 1. And that, again, like the other intersections, we're looking at level of service C or better. I'm looking at our table. Right now, turning a left out of the stop sign at Cottage Road is level of service B and C. So it's going to be quite similar in the future with or without this development.
Okay.
All right, so you looked into it and you accommodated it in your
That's
analysis.
correct. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the commission? Or the traffic
No.
study? Thank you, Neil.
Can I have questions, from the audience or no?
Welcome.
Should we go through the whole presentation or should we alternate at this
So,
point?
I really want to just ask questions, not make controversial or combative remarks. I just really would like.
About the traffic study?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, why don't you go ahead then?
Okay, good. Can I
Oh, we've got Neil
come
on.
up? Yeah, where should I stand so I can,
The microphone is over here,
Okay.
Tom.
great,
Stand there and yell.
stand anywhere and yell. Here?
It's up here, so,
Oh.
yep, you,
Standing here
if
is
you want to
fine?
be
Yeah.
seen, sure.
Perfect,
You're welcome to
thanks.
sit.
All right.
Table.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate it. I just want to ask, I'm Attorney Thomas Crosby. I represent the owners of the adjoining property, the package store. So it's Mr. Olinsky, and I wanted to ask you a couple questions if you don't mind. Can we put back up that traffic flow plan that I think Mike Ott had put up before, because it might make the questions easier and quicker? Is that something
Well,
Mike
I
you
could-
could do? Do you want me to hand like a copy of
I
it?
I can share that, Tom. Just give me 1 sec.
Thank you, appreciate it. It'll help me ask my questions.
Can you see that?
Oh, we can, yeah, thank you very much, appreciate it, that'd be great. So, Mr. Olinsky, I could just figure this out. I thought, and I'm not sure, but I thought that there were two Cottage Road, let's call them curb cuts. One farther to the east, I don't know the addresses of these properties on there, but 1343. And then there was one sort of behind, but not exactly behind, what we've called 1339. Is that correct? I mean, is the plan we're dealing with does it have two cuts? And I think one of them had a reference, as I saw the plan. It said something like the words swingable, emergency only gate, new. Does that make sense, Mr. Olinsky? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
Mike can speak to that because he did the site plan.
yeah,
Okay.
I think I could answer that, Tom.
Sure.
So in our, I think what you might have seen was an early version of our plans where there was an emergency access drive only shown coming out to Cottage Road. In fact, if you can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
It was right about there.
Right.
And that was a very early version of the plans, but the current version of the plans, since it's been quite a while now, we are not proposing any new access drives, whether full-time drives or emergency to Cottage Road.
Okay, so then my follow-up question to Mr. Olinsky was, what would that previous plan, with that emergency only swingable gate, would that make the access for fire equipment and so forth, would that give it another access, and would it increase the safety of the access?
I mean, it would certainly give it another access. I think the plan we have here is most likely plenty adequate for emergency access as shown in front of you.
With regard to emergency access, if I could, the fire marshal did comment, and it's possible that Aaron has his response, but my recollection is the Fire Marshal did comment that the emergency access drive would not provide added benefit to the fire department. That was his opinion, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Okay, so there's a document somewhere that says those words, another entrance or another exit wouldn't make any difference on the, yeah.
Yeah, I think Aaron, I hate to put Aaron on the spot.
I can get
but
that. I'm not gonna,
she might
yeah,
be
I
able to supply it.
don't want to waste your time to do that. Can I ask the other question? So, Mr. Olinsky and maybe Mr. Ott, so it seems as though the state of Connecticut, because this is previously an approved plan in 2004, 2005, 2006. It seems as though the state of Connecticut developed a traffic plan. They approved, the DOT approved a state traffic analysis. Did you rely in any way in developing this plan on those two reports? I think one is an August 16, 2005 report, and the other's a November 17, 2009 report. And I've introduced those. Have those been incorporated in your traffic study?
I presume, again, I'm filling in, so I didn't
Yeah, I
work
don't
on
mean
all
to put you on the spot, yeah.
studies. I'm assuming our staff did look at that, did look at the history. I don't have it at my fingertips or in front of me, and I haven't looked at the old 2005 state reports or whatever they are, so I can't really speak to them. But I'm presuming when we do our studies, we always try to find out whatever important background material is necessary for any project. But background material isn't everything. You have to look at things new, do new traffic counts based on current conditions as well.
Okay. And then the last question I had is, was there an analysis of the traffic flow of vehicles entering, because I'm representing the liquor store property, and we're obviously concerned because there's a loading dock behind the building. So I'm just asking whether your traffic report analyzed the traffic patterns of commercial vehicles coming in, parking, loading into that building, and how they're going to enter and exit. Because we're assuming, and the applicant's attorney told us, they'll probably go around our building, which we're not thrilled about. We're not happy about having all the, whatever commercial traffic accessing these 12 new commercial units, with the back being the loading and unloading area. I guess I was asking, did you analyze any of that in your report? I didn't see it, but I don't know, maybe you did.
And the reports look at generally off-site conditions when you look at traffic study and the impacts that off-site intersections and intersections that are site driveways. I think the site plan as shown is if it's adequate for a fire truck to be able to get around, it should be adequate for a delivery box truck, for example, to be able to get into the loading dock without making any unusual or circuitous routing that's unnecessary. I think a delivery truck would simply just go straight into the loading dock. And if they had to go around the back first to get in from the site, they would do that as well.
Did you see any issues like, let's say I'm a perpendicular parker and I'm an old school, got a box truck, and I'm going to pull in, back in, get my stuff out of the back. Did you see any problems with the traffic flow to the rest of the development? Because it looks like it's all funneled in, at least for the first curb cut, the westernmost curb cut on Boston Post Road. That wouldn't that maybe block some of the traffic flow that's going to either park for the residential units or going around the rest of the building?
I'm not sure your question. I don't think a box truck coming in would block traffic any more than a regular vehicle would come in. He would simply just enter the site.
Okay. I just wondered if your report looked into that, but if it did or didn't, I can argue it, I suppose. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Could I make a comment about that plan as long as it's up, please?
It's down, but we can bring it up.
I'm John Matthews, architect, 817 Boston Post Road, and a town resident. Since we have made this a two-way drive, okay, there is no loading dock. There's just a loading space. Trucks would come in here, unload their stuff, come out, come around and exit the site. There wouldn't be any need, there's no trucks backing into here, there's no loading dock, there's only a door.
Can we stop looking at this picture? I can't, it doesn't do any good for me. We're gonna have this conversation. Mike, can you pull up the site plan? Because there's some one-way streets in that parking lot.
Yeah, but as long as you're talking about the circulation, I wanted to
understand.
point out that there's a clear circulation pattern and no loading docks. It was referred to by Attorney Crosby.
You might be.
It just says loading
Or you
or
might-
unloading, no parking, that's all it says, right there. There's a, when you pull up my site plan, you see it. Unless that's been changed.
There's 12.
Get the most recent one.
I
Does-
think the one with the one-way traffic. There's one,
There's
that
a-
right? Show it there.
The civil drawings
That one?
show the traffic circulation.
Thank you.
Can the commission see my screen?
You
Yes.
can see it.
Okay. Yeah, so this might be the cleanest plan to look at. Hopefully it'll help you. This is the site layout plan and it has all the dimensions of the drive lanes on it. But remember, this is the version with the 16-foot wide driveway here before we revised it to 20 feet for the fire marshal.
Is that road that you're looking at? I thought that was a one-way road.
It's a one-way drive lane, yes, and on our
Yes.
plans, we have it signed. There's one-way signs shown on our plans. The reason it's one-way is see the 60-degree angled parking here? These 4 spaces? Yep.
So then the flow of traffic cannot come in adjacent to 1333 and go up and make a right and out. There's no way.
It can't go clockwise.
No, again, remember, and I'm sorry, maybe I didn't explain this clear enough, but this is the version where the drive lane was 16 feet and it was a one-way plan. Just yesterday, at the fire marshal's request, we increased that width to 20 feet and that would allow for two-way traffic.
Okay, so
And does
I-
the parking angle stay the same then with the 20-foot width?
Yeah,
So
the
that
parking.
would still have to be accessed really counterclockwise.
The parking would stay the same. If you think about it, I think it's reasonable to assume that those 4 parking spaces would be used by people familiar with the site and the building, given where it is. It's in the rear of this building, and it's just those 4 spaces. If you give me a second, I can show you the version that we sent to the fire marshal yesterday, but it's essentially this, except these dimensions, these 1, 2, 3 16-foot dimensions are now 20 feet. Everything was pushed 4 feet to the north.
If you could pull it up, that'd be great.
Yeah, it'll take me a sec. I'll just have to try to find it. If the commission could bear with me a second.
Wasted an hour today. Looking at these plans that are not.
The current.
Okay, I think I have it. Okay, can the commission see my screen again?
and zoom in some more, please.
Yep, so you'll see those 3 dimensions I was talking about have now been increased to 20 feet.
With the 20 feet, you could turn an arc and make that parking slot.
I guess you could. Very good. Parking. Okay, and so that is two-way.
It's not too late.
So
It is,
development, you can go, the traffic can flow clockwise or counterclockwise now.
Correct.
correct,
Okay.
correct. Yep.
Are those parking spaces big enough that you wouldn't be necessarily into the 20 feet?
Oh, yeah, these are standard parking space dimensions for angled parking, and if you look closely, see this line right here? If you extend this line all the way across, that defines the 20-foot drive lane, and these spaces are, meet typical common standards, including the towns, for angled parking stalls.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The angled slot is like 17 feet.
Okay. Any other questions?
I think it's also important to mention that if you ran the dimension of those spaces, the length of the actual angle depth, it would be more than that 15.6 feet.
Yeah, like you said, it'd
That
be
way.
like 17 feet, yeah.
It should be 20.
And if you're coming, yeah, if you're going clockwise around, it's taking that swing to park. You've got that.
Yeah, this, to Neil's point, this is a layout plan. It's for the contractor to know what the widths of the pavement are and where the curb lines are. To Neil's point, these are actually 18-foot long stall lengths. In fact, there's a detail of this 60-degree parking shown on our detail sheets in the plan set.
Any other traffic questions? I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Neil.
You're welcome. Thank you.
John, did you want to speak about that? I'm assuming you'd like to move on to the next.
Sure, yeah, thanks.
Yes.
John Matthews, architect, 817 Boston Post Road. And I have some little handouts I'd like to. Commission.
Yeah, I'll take care.
Here, I'll look through it. To respond to some of the comments that we've had, and Aaron, could we look at some of those elevations?
You want your revisions from today to share?
And we haven't seen these.
Yes, but they're put together with the originals as well. Like I wanted to go, for instance, this was the one that you guys saw last time, which was a 45-foot roof. We revised that by cutting the roof down by 4 feet, so it's now only 41 feet. And it really makes the bulk of the building a lot smaller. Whenever we get to,
I'm sorry, I'm misunderstanding you. Which plans do you want me?
well, show me the new
The
ones.
new ones? Okay, got it. I have them broken out.
That's not.
Sheet A2A.
Okay.
Carol, sheet A2A. Go back to 4 pages.
There's also on the handout that you have what we call the neighborhood plan, which shows our site plan and the Wellington site plan, where you can relate to the two complexes because they keep coming up. So this is the new elevation. Let me get my pointer here. That's proposed. If you can see this line up here, that's where the roof was before. That's the 4-foot drop. And this would be the east side of 1339 that looks into the parking lot, which is what we'll call the front elevation, if you will. And then these are the two end elevations. And then if you raise it up, Aaron. This would be the rear elevation that faces the west. And this is where our loading area is. We did put an overhead door there. It's not a loading dock. We were talking to one potential tenant who might go there. He was a lighting store and he wanted to be able to have bigger boxes delivered. Most likely this will end up just being a pair of 6-foot doors. But we don't have tenants yet, so, you know, those doors are
Flexible.
flexible.
So the ostensible
And
reason.
this is the gable ends that we have on over all of the gables that stick out, you know, and this was a sample of what it would be in that blue color. And just as long as we're talking about that, people can't see, but there's the siding color that we're talking about. And that's the roof shingles and that's the brick base. And we checked that all out with ACA and they were great with it. Of course, they haven't seen the roof being lowered, but I don't think they're going to have an issue with that.
So on the north and south elevations, the gable is still the same height? It sticks up
Yes,
higher than the rest?
And some of them stick up above, but that's not uncommon in a building. So when you see this, you know, this looks like a big thing here, but that's just the face of that gable roof over that big porch. On 1339, we have a much larger porch that all the tenants can come out and enjoy. And on the south side, they can see the sound and Salt Meadow Park.
But that is the visual
Yes,
looking east.
right.
And that's a 4-foot set down from that gable now to that roof line is what you're there.
Yeah, that's about 4 feet, yeah. Again, if you drop this down, you can see the gable roof. And the gable is because of the size of this porch here, which is, I think, a great thing.
So that has not gone to ACA because that change was submitted today.
Right,
This
right.
occurred, changed at midnight last night.
Yeah.
Okay, and so do you have a drawing or an illustration that shows it relative to the other buildings with this new configuration of the roof?
I mean, I would suggest that you could send ACA these changes and see what they thought.
Pages
Could
in that
probably
one?
email them.
Let me,
Oh, got it.
that's the SCA.
Okay, I see it.
Yes, the SCA page.
Got it.
Yeah, the next drawing that I want to have you pull up is a SCA drawing, which is the street facade all along the post road. And it also has a site section that goes through the site all the way back to Wellington. Yeah, and so here's let's look at this section first. So scoot it up, Aaron.
I have a lot of things on the screen that I have
Right,
to
yeah,
move to
this
get
one
to
is-
the arrows. Bear with me,
This
please.
drawing is a 6-foot-long drawing, the original. Okay, so now if you slide it that way, right there, okay. So again, that's where the roof used to be, and now it's down here.
But that does not show the gables up higher.
On the end.
Not at either end. yeah. So this is through 1341, and those only stick up slightly. Only on 1339 do they stick up. This is the red house, which is beyond, it's where the existing driveway to Cottage Road is from 1343. This is our neighbor across the street at 117, the veterinarian. And so there's really quite a separation. And he is allegedly sending a letter saying this is a great thing.
There's a letter.
Dr. Yost,
We haven't received
but
it.
he's in Fort Lauderdale at the
I
moment.
think it's.
And one of the things that happens, this is Cottage Road. There is berm right there now, and it's full of all kind of plants and stuff. And Mr. Cunningham will be dealing with that and taking out the invasive and putting in stuff where plants need to be put. We also have a 6-foot fence in some of the areas where it's a little more open. But this is quite, I think, quite a change. These are where the balconies are. That's the little gable roofs over the balconies on either side.
Okay, so
But this is the 1341. You know, the building that's in the front has just a little blip up. It's 39. It has the bigger gable.
so the ostensible reason for lowering the roof height is just aesthetics.
I'm sorry.
The ostensible reason for lowering the roof height is simply aesthetics.
Right. Well, we had a comment back that people thought our height, questioned our height and our bulk. So I think this really addresses that. And frankly, I think it's better.
And
It was a good comment.
it still covers the RTUs that are on it.
Right. Yes. Yes. And we'll look at that. There's another drawing. But this is the building in Wellington on Cottage Road, the one most west, because that side is angled. And you can see the difference between here and here. It's like football field and a half. So I don't really think there's any issue about that.
So John, why did you leave that gable sticking out like that? What, is there a operational reason or what is, all the other gables are significantly lower than that?
The gables are a reflection of the width of the bed.
These are arches. These are really important
Yes,
for
yeah, so-
everybody.
You would distort the triangle if you didn't any other.
No, I understand you could also make the balconies smaller.
You know, frankly,
And make the
I don't
building
have a
look
problem with those
aesthetically
gables
pleasing.
sticking up. It's just the gable. The other roof comes and wraps around. It's almost like a penthouse, for lack of a better word. And so let's go down now to the bottom. This is the street elevation. And this is the really important thing, okay? Here's 1343. There's the ridge of 1343. With our drop roof, looking at this building, which you think that's a ridge, but it's really a mansard, we're pretty much at the exact same elevation. Where before it's stuck up another 4 feet. And again, here you can see the end south porch that looks out to Salt Meadow Park on 39. So the two buildings are similar, but a little different. And the units in 39 are larger than they are in 1341. So is there any sort of questions about the, so Aaron, let's go to the next drawing,
Which one is that, John?
the A2A.
The one we just had up?
Oh, we started with that one.
We started with
Oh, okay, I didn't
A2A.
realize we started. Well, we can look at A4A, but it's a black and white version of this for 1341. It's not colored, but just to show you what happens with the
Okay.
roof coming down. And again, you can see how the roof is down. These are the balcony roofs, you know, here on the side facing the residential courtyard. That one pokes up about 2.5 to 3 feet because this is a much narrower porch. And that is a porch. So the tenants can come out to this and overlook what's going on down below in the courtyard. And then on the east end, there's a little bay. It's a small bay, so that roof is similar to, it's even smaller than those roofs. And we did it because otherwise we didn't just want a blank wall there. Yep. A question?
On the west end of 1341,
This is the west end.
that does come up
Yeah.
higher.
That
That's the
one
only,
pops up about three feet.
One on each building.
just as the same as the south. Okay.
And so let's go to a 5A, I think. Almost done. And again, these are the blow up end elevations. And again, the roofs used to be up here. And you know, this is the end of 1341, and you can see how it sticks up. It only sticks up a little bit. And then on these porches, we have lighting plans and stuff where we have these square mounted lights on the porches, and the big ones, there are two, and the typical balcony, there's one. They're about like this. They come out about like this, and they just show the light right down on the balconies, because there was some concern about what you see. All right, so let's go to a 6A.
Was this one that was adjusted? This
Yeah, the
furthest
roof
one
used,
is
the
adjust-
roof used to be, see where that line stopped up there? That's where the 4 foot was dropped. This is just a visual of those, a blow up of those end porches. Shows you the detail of the balconies and the railings and stuff. As a matter of fact, on the other drawing submitted, there's a sectional detail of the balcony rails.
Okay.
And
A6.
a 6A, yes. And again, these are the sections through the buildings that show what happens. Again, you can see that sort of sketchy line up there. That's where it used to be. We dropped it down. We used to have like a 5 foot attic. Now we have a 3 foot attic, and we still have almost a 4 foot bathtub for the air conditioners to go up there. So nobody's going to see those at all. And we have roof drains, and we have overflow scuppers for the roof that come down. And then there's a detail that shows where the exhaust hood for the kitchen, for the restaurant goes up through, which is on this sheet here. So the hood comes up like this, and then out here, there's one of those typical mushroom fans up top. I would like to look at the one of the earlier plans that shows maybe that neighborhood plan.
It would be in the large file. Number 1, the architectural PDF.
There's been an awful lot of talk about the traffic and the circulation. I've been working on this site for 22 years. I know a little bit about it.
You're talking about your composite
Right,
plan?
right. But there is also a composite that shows Wellington. It's called a neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, when you submitted
It's
that.
actually in that little handout I gave you. If not, you can just throw the,
I don't,
if not, you can just throw the site plan with the color on it. Okay, yeah, but this is sort of an interesting plan because it shows our project and it shows Wellington. And people were concerned about, you know, how this building affected Wellington. And that section that I showed you was cut right through here. This is 117, the vets, and that was their last building. This is a community building. That's the existing red house that's been there, and that's opposite the existing curb cut. This drawing was made before we made the 20-foot wide driveway. But the thing is, both of these say they're loading areas, not loading docks. So the truck comes in like this, he unloads with a two-way drive, he drives around here and he goes out. The trucks that unload here, drive up here, go down the driveway, and they go out. And if you look at the cross easements, we have the right for egress and egress on all parcels to all people. So I don't think there's any violations. We don't really see any need for anybody to come here. However, we have a shared refuse thing. The refuse truck has to come in there, and that's probably going to go out that way, or he's going to back this way and go out that way. So any questions, or
I have other questions, actually. Which have to do with parking and restaurants and use, and the commercial spaces. The restaurant that you're proposing, how many seats is it?
114.
At 114 at this point, okay. And have you done the calculations for us about how many spaces
Yes.
would be needed if we go with 2 spaces per dwelling unit, 1 space for 4 seats?
I believe would be 7 spaces short on our property.
Okay,
But we have all these cross, we get to park behind the package store. They get to park in front of our.
What's the number of spaces that are needed
yeah.
for the new development?
I don't have that number.
Because I also have 1 space for 30,000 square feet for trucks and 1 space for 250 square feet for retail, which would be like 41 more spaces. I don't know if you've done all those
No, the
calculations.
space for the trucks is
We're gonna let
is
Mike
the loading area.
Mike got speak too.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's got parking numbers.
Oh, he's not there.
I tried doing the math.
I spoke with Mike earlier today.
Okay,
We have 125 spaces on our site. The requirement for the zoning regulations is 132 spaces on the site. And so, but with the cross easement agreement that we have, we can park on any of the other parcels part of the marketplace. So and similarly, they can park on our property if they need to use our parking spaces as well.
Does Mike have the calculations? Because I ran the numbers too, and I have it slightly higher, I have 144 spaces.
Mike did run the numbers. He unfortunately has a conflict. He's
Okay.
zooming at another.
so we'll add it to the to-do list.
Yes. Well,
Okay.
we will confirm that, but I did discuss that with him this afternoon. And that's what.
And as part of that, what I'd like to understand, I tried doing this myself, but the data wasn't available on the maps, is understanding the parking requirements for the other buildings. If this is gonna be one large parking lot, I'd like to understand the parking requirements for each of the buildings that are part of that parking lot. So
Complex.
Sure.
the dermatology building has 12 apartments.
I don't think.
On the plans, it has 12 apartments above.
Okay.
Which one?
Third level.
No, I'm talking about dermatology.
He's talking about
The
1343.
existing,
13,
Oh, no,
43.
there are 8 apartments.
Yeah,
in that.
so that's what I'm saying, I'm going based on what's on the drawing.
Yeah, we need all that information.
Okay.
And
we
then
can-
measurement space requires
I can
more.
tell you, there are 8 apartments. in that.
But that they want to know what the parking is requirement for
Right.
those, given.
So the whole,
given-
like an aggregate parking analysis, so we can get a sense of what it looks like.
You're wrong.
We can get that for you.
Great.
Okay, great.
right, that was one thing I was going to bring up, because my understanding is you are requesting a reduction under 8.2.
Correct. We're requesting a waiver or reduction from the commission I know there was some concern at one point about maybe we have too much parking in the area, because there's a lot of parking spaces throughout the area. So we're trying to balance those two goals. So, but we'd be happy to get you that information. But
Great.
yes, to Ms. Mannix's point, that we are requesting with respect to spaces on our site, the reduction. But again, I'd point out through the cross access and parking agreement, it was when this was originally proposed 20 years ago, the idea was everybody was going to share the parking and access. And that's what everybody agreed to do, including parking on the various lots.
Legally, does this need to be updated then?
I don't think it does, but
Okay.
I don't think so. That was the agreement. And I don't think so.
So that's a relevant questions, what you're bringing up as far as the parking. And 8.2B allows for the commission to reduce the requirements, provided, one, that if you feel it's excessive for the use, or two, that the shared parking arrangements with adjacent parcels will provide adequate parking for the use. There are two others that don't necessarily apply in this case: sufficient parking in the context of surrounding area or sufficient public parking. But I think, yes, the agreements for parking were established some 20 years ago. The uses, my understanding of 1339 and 1341 were slightly different at that time than currently.
I think I'd have to look through the minutes.
That would be the only,
But my recollection from reviewing the minutes was that they were still 1339 and 1341 were both proposed to be mixed use
yes.
buildings. So that's not different. What I think has increased is the number of residences in the two buildings, from 10 in both of them to 12 in both of them.
Okay.
But I think that's the only difference. I think where they're located remains unchanged
And the footprint?
and the footprint remains unchanged. So
This is
yeah,
the first time.
I
we're seeing
guess-
this.
no,
Yeah.
Right, and my only other question would be the addition of the 114 seat restaurant in that plaza. Was that initially contemplated at that?
I don't believe it was. I don't think it got into the detail of whether or not a restaurant was proposed, but I'm just going off of what I found in your minutes, but I'd be happy to look through the minutes again and see what I can find. Unfortunately.
That's kind of what I had. found as well.
Unfortunately, I don't know if the commission is YouTubing or recording. It's
Doubtful. That's definitely not YouTubing at the time.
It was 20 years ago.
Having drawn the
the other-
buildings, it was just retail.
Yeah.
There was no restaurant
There was no
proposed.
specific use. other
So
than
that-
Retail office.
So that's a change in the use, and although it's retail.
And parking
it's-
generators,
it's-
essentially.
yes.
Yeah.
But that's also, I believe, factored into the parking space calculation that Mike got prepared, which I will confirm with him and get back.
Yes.
Great to see that.
And then
Yeah.
my last question about the parking is the hour, if there's overlap in parking versus business hours, residential use.
Right.
I know we've had some newer tenants adjacent, for example, a dance studio that does have evening classes and hours, so that isn't your typical retail
That's
or
true.
office during those. So as you're going through your parking, if you kind of take that into
I mean,
consideration.
even Aaron, to that point too, that the residences are no longer truly 9 to 5, working off-site, I don't think.
Yes.
Post-pandemic.
I did speak with Mr. Ott about that question, and if you give me a moment, I'll get that. He had put together a list of the tenants that are there currently. Obviously, that can change over time, but I'll give you the hours of operation that were there in the spaces that.
And I do think that was a conversation at the time of the original development as well, not to be calculating each individual building and the tenants in there, but more a campus, to kind of get, to have an overall, not to limit the additional,
Right.
but since it is a change, an increase in the use, in these buildings that I guess, and because they're requesting a reduction, I think that's a valid question
Appropriate.
to ask so that you have that information to be able to support your reduction of the requirement.
To that point, and that was one of the other questions I had. Is, I understand we can do the analysis of the aggregate number of parking spaces, calculate what's needed for what's in each building, and we'll come up with a number. The layout is such that some of the parking spaces, it doesn't seem like they would be appropriate to be assigned to a building. So if you look at the parking lot of 1347, it's unlikely that parking would be used by 1339.
Right.
It's a pretty long walk. You're not gonna park there and walk to a store over there. But again, these aren't facts. This is just like a gut reaction. I don't know if there's any kind of analysis or
I don't
study
know.
that's done to say what's an appropriate distance to expect someone to walk before a parking space is no longer considered convenient.
Some of that may have been included in the agreement.
I think
Right,
in your
the assumption.
regulations, actually.
See?
It doesn't have a distance,
Yeah, I didn't find it.
Where is the restaurant? Is in
1341.
1341, that's that,
Corner
right,
here.
that corner, so.
And it has a patio.
This is with regard to in 8.1 of your regs, that, and
Yes.
the commission may allow parking facilities located within 1,000 feet from the building they serve.
That's almost the Hammonasset River, I think.
Well, I think that was contemplated in the agreement language as well. There were some specifics as I looked through some of the legal documents originally about who would realistically use common patio areas, more frequently, but I didn't recall reading anything that they were excluding certain parking areas from the overall calculations for one building.
No, in fact,
I didn't get that sense.
if I could trouble you to look at the document that I handed out initially, if you go through it, you'll see that each signatory to it is recited, and then it goes down almost property owner by property owner, and it starts with HPS Hammonasset Package Store. And this is on page 197 up at the top. And the first paragraph says, HPS grants to 1339 as an appurtenance to the 1339 property, meaning to benefit 1339, a non-exclusive right of ingress and egress, both vehicular and pedestrian, and a non-exclusive right to park vehicles in common with others in the parking spaces located upon the HPS property. The entire property, not just those spaces next door to 1339. That's what it says. And then if you look at paragraph 2, it gives the same grant to 1341. And then if you look at paragraph 3, it gives the same grant to 1343. And it gives us, it goes from one to the other, to the other, to the other. And then it moves on to 1339. 1339 grants to HPS the same rights. And then 1347, I don't want to belabor the point, but the idea was everybody's sharing parking, everybody's sharing access, and that was the concept, and that's what everybody agreed to when this document was signed.
Okay, so there's a lot of information you still need for the next meeting.
I did want to just, I don't know if you're ready to move past parking,
Yes, parking, yes.
but I did want to bring up one other section of the regulations, 8.4, that indicates there shall be no parking in the front yard, but the
yeah.
commission may waive this requirement if it is in the best interest of the district. So my understanding is that is also a request.
You've touched on a lot of the points that I was going to bring up in a few minutes, but I thank you for doing that. But
Just
yes.
queuing you up.
No, I appreciate it. But yes, our proposal is to ask for that waiver. Again, the buildings that have already been built, 1343, which has the doctor's office on the first floor, has parking in the front of the building or between the building and the Boston Post Road, which is where the frontage is. Similarly, at 1347, there's parking at the front. There's parking in front of the package store, and we're proposing that there be, for continuity purposes, it would make sense from our perspective and presumably from the commission's perspective that you grant a waiver to allow parking in front of these buildings that we're proposing as well. So yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Are there any other questions? Okay.
Parking. Okay.
Did you have some other questions, some other
Do
topics?
you have more?
No, I'm okay for
Yeah,
now.
okay. I had two. First one was hopefully an easy one. At the last meeting, actually my memory, there was a discussion about essentially a barrier between the home just behind the package store and the rest of and this new project. I can't tell from the revisions if that would include it in the plan. I don't remember if we agreed to anything
A
specific.
fence or
think it was-
Was it
screening?
a fence or screening or greenery?
It was stated to be a fence.
Yeah.
At the
I believe it's a fence, and if it's not on the plans, it's an
Okay.
oversight, but it.
No, there is a fence there. I wasn't sure if that was what was agreed to.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
as
It's a
we
6-foot,
proposed as a fence,
Okay.
as a barrier.
There was a question at the meeting about lighting. And I don't know if this is an appropriate time, but John, you added some detail when you went to ACA this month about lighting on the balconies on that side. And how those would be, and you updated the photometric plan as
Right.
well. So I don't think we've shared that.
No, and there's a reflected ceiling plan that shows how all the lights are under the first floor roofs to light up the walkways around both buildings.
But
And there are
shining
small
directly
recessed
down.
Yeah,
lights.
I think we saw that.
Those were downlit, but the question was also on the balconies as you're getting up on the floors.
The higher you
How
go.
would those be illuminated and if those would be shielded?
And we
Or
submitted
visible offset.
information on those.
And I believe Mr. Matthews earlier this evening said that those lights are shining directly down
Right.
onto the balconies and not to be visible off premises.
Yes, that's an update from your last meeting that did go through ACA, but is reflected in the plans. I know we have multiple
No, I know.
folders of revisions, so I just wanted to point that out.
And I just want to say, I apologize for these revisions that are coming in, but we're trying to respond to the responses that we're receiving from the various agencies that we've been working with. And that's why when you may recall in Mike Ott's presentation earlier, we got a response from the health department, Tuesday evening and responded immediately Wednesday morning. So
Right.
I share your frustration to the extent that
It
you're
would be
being,
great,
you're
yeah.
frustrated with the time spent reviewing these plans.
If we
but
could get them before 5 PM on the day of the meeting, that'd be great.
We would love to be able to do that. It's just that we're trying to be responsive to the issues that are being presented
Thanks.
as quickly as we can. So it's
So I
not
think-
as though we're saying, oh my goodness, we've got
Let's-
to
yeah.
submit
One
these
more.
things.
I'm not sure how to way to approach this, but the one thing that comes up is Karen, you might know which reg it is, the 200%.
I was gonna bring that up, so it was
Yeah.
clear to the commission what specifically you need to consider here in reviewing this.
Right.
Um,
Well, let me just get at my question. So
Yep.
when I look at it, the calculation is about 300+% residential to commercial. And that's significant. I'm just looking at numbers on the latest one. We take the total first and second floor space, which is the residential space as it calls it out, divided by the commercial space on the first floors. There's some storage units, there's a gym, there's a community room, something like that, which are residential. You end up with just over 300%. You would think it would be 300, but it's just over 300%. So it's a significant change. Deviation.
I'm not quite sure of the question. I'm having a hard time hearing.
It's we're talking about the ratio of residential to commercial space and what's allowed and what you're asking for.
Right. But you're right, it is greater than the regulations permit as of right, which is the 200% figure. But the commission does have the authority to waive or
Right.
alter that ratio if they make a finding that the dwelling, that that it improves the housing stock in the town and is not going to substantially erode the commercial development of the district. And our position is that we're introducing 1 and 2 bedroom, primarily 2-bedroom units, all two bedroom units into these buildings, which there are not a great deal of in the town already. And we're doing it in an area that will not negatively,
Thank you.
that will not
Sorry.
negatively,
This hearing's ending.
that will not negatively impact the commercial development of the district because we're introducing significant commercial use on these 2 sites. So well, you're right that it is beyond what your regs permit. We also think that we've demonstrated the reason why we think we can make this request and the commission should feel comfortable approving it.
And it would be good to have the numbers if you can make.
The
those
exact
numbers.
percentage?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to get you that.
What is that? Yes, so the portions of the first floor that are being utilized for the residential
Residential.
use and not for a commercial use?
If you'd like to, we can do it without
Yeah.
that number
How much is
included
that?
and with that number included. as well.
There are certain
That'd be great.
spaces, there are certain spaces on the first floor that supports both. like
Right. Well,
Sprinkler, electrical.
Well, right, but the storage rooms, the community room, the fitness center
Things
that
that-
are for the
Clearly
residential
residential.
uses, that I think is relevant in your consideration in balancing whether or not to
Did you
approve
count,
that increase.
count the lobby and the elevators and the fire stairs? I mean,
I
it gets
think-
ridiculous at
I
some
think,
point.
I think we can give you the information that you're asking for.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary. Because to the point, it's not just that because it's a big number above what the regs say. My concern is that when you couple that this is predominantly a residential building in a commercial district with some almost limited commercial entities on the bottom because of the size of the restaurant, the number of commercial entities are limited. Combine that with my concern about the way the parking is laid out, I'm worried it could have a negative impact on the commercial business.
Accessibility.
Specifically, not necessarily a mile down the road, great, more people is better. The vet loves it because there's more people with pets, that's all good, it's gonna be good. But those people, those apartments have a lot of cars parked in front of all that commercial space. And that's my concern, is you're gonna limit the success of those commercial endeavors.
Right.
Because of all those people out there. People will drive it, but they're also gonna have a negative impact. And I'm trying to wrap my head around that and understand it. So.
A fair
about
question.
that, maybe the numbers,
I-
that'd be awesome.
I'd be happy to do that. But I think that's why we made an effort to put as much parking behind the buildings as we could, with the idea being that that's where the
Residential.
residents would use for their primary parking space, rather than leave it in. I'm, again, just speaking for myself, I would feel more comfortable leaving my car in an area
Yeah.
where there's less traffic than there would be, people coming and going throughout the day or the evening. So. The only other thing that I would add is, earlier this evening, Attorney Crosby represented that I said that the traffic would go around the Ham and Acid package store. I did make that statement to him when we were discussing this yesterday. I also spoke with him today, and I said, as an effort to try and address his client's concerns, we would be happy to introduce signage directing delivery vehicles to navigate their way towards Cottage Road, around the back of the building, so as not to create the problem that this client is concerned. So I wanted to make sure the commission was aware that we're not just saying tough, deal with it. So my client would like to say a few words if he could, unless there's other questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
I think we're okay for now.
I'm good.
We know this is going to be continued.
Yes.
So
Mr. Rand.
Thank you. Michael Randall, 1307 Marion Road, Chester, Connecticut. I'm one of the principals. There's 4 of us. 2 of my partners are here. And unfortunately, one of them got stuck in Florida playing golf. So with respect to the parking, there's plenty of parking there. We're going to do the traffic parking analysis for you. And with respect to Cohen Bagels, Hamassa Packager, we want to be good landlords. We're excited about being here in Madison. We take this very seriously, everything we're doing. And I share the commission's frustration, excuse me, Chairman Snow, thank you, Ms. Mannix, thank you, your office. We share the frustration with respect to trying to figure all this out. Now, as of right, I believe it's 30 feet. We could do a 30-foot flat roof. It'll look silly in that area. We could put a white picket fence up for the rooftop units. We're trying to do a beautiful design that the town can live with in the commission and be proud of driving down the street, the seasonal residents that come to town, the local residents. We hope some people are going to downsize and come to our condominiums that are going to be for sale. We don't have to have the restaurant, 114 seats. We can reduce that number. We want everyone to be happy. We want the right parking flow. We want the right parking schematic with respect to residents coming home and parking next to their condominium. The price point is going to be such where they're going to want to park in front of their building. You know, is someone going to park at the 7 spaces adjacent to Hamnessa Shore and walk to Cohen's Bagels? Probably not, but they might. If they're exercising, they're going to take their bike across the street. So I think parking is difficult anywhere. You know, you go to Christie's on a Monday or a Sunday, it's tough parking. You know,
Christie's is unusual.
pardon?
Christie's is an exception.
Right, that's.
Yeah, right. So my point, you know, there's some days my wife and I go in on Sunday, and fortunately I have a beach sticker. We have other property in town. I can park on the beach if I have to. So, you know, come after May 27th, there's no parking. CVS, Cumberland Farms, and I feel the frustration. But I think with respect to the hours of all the other businesses there, you know, if you drive by now on the way home, if you go that way, the parking lot's empty. I don't imagine the restaurant being open later than 9 o'clock in the off season, in the season 10 o'clock. In respect to the traffic flow, you know, we're open to doing anything that Hamnessa Package Store requests with signage. We can, you know, train the drivers to go out that way. You know, maybe they come in that way and, you know, they park on 1339 if, you know, the pack store is busy and they unload there. That's fine. So it's very important that, you know, we're very committed to this and we take this very seriously. And we look forward to being a good landlord. We're going to have an on-site office. We're not absent landlords. There'll be no restaurant there that'll have unruly people, no loud music. You know, there won't be people watering flowers on Cottage Road at night. It'll be very, very regulated. So I just want to make that point that we're trying to do the best we can. And I know one of the members had some frustration with reading it now, or, you know, it's 4 more feet. And I understand. Mr. Matthews called me at 10:01 last night and, you know, with the change. So everything's very fluid. So, you know, thank you all for your time. Ms. Mannix, is there a chance we can get on May 2nd's agenda in 2 weeks from now?
Well, I think that's up to the commission
Okay.
as far as when to continue. And whether or not you would like to have feedback from ACCA regarding any changes to the architectural
Yeah.
drawings, because that will determine whether or not it's the next meeting or the following to
So we have to go to
accommodate
ACCA a third time? Can we do it administratively? With the board member of ACCA? To take a look at the reduced roof?
They meet as a committee at their public meeting. They don't have an administrative process. So
So it sounds like it would be May 16th. Not May 2nd.
And there's no chance of a vote tonight with conditions.
No, I
Way
think
too
we need a
complicated.
lot more information.
Great. You're gonna move forward, but.
I have one last question still about the parking and I just thought of it, Mr. Anna, when you talked about loading areas and vicinity of 1333. I looked at the earlier, you know, the 20-year-old plan didn't have loading area behind 1339. And so I went back to our zoning regulations to see where they're required. And you're required 1 per 30,000 square feet of retail, industrial, wholesale, whatever the use is. Is there ability to eliminate that as a loading area in that? Does that resolve any concerns? And perhaps they were shown as parallel spaces 20 years ago. I'm not saying that's necessarily appropriate or would fit here. I haven't measured anything,
Absolutely.
but is there any,
100%. Mr.
I don't know what the
Matthews,
need for,
Mr. Matthews put that roll up door for me because we're talking to a tile company and about putting pallets of tile through that 4 or 6 foot door. We can 100% eliminate that. So based on your calculation of 30,000 square feet in one spot, we're 14,000 downstairs. So do we need a half a spot or we still need a loading area? We could call it a unloading loading area.
well, you have a second designated area behind the restaurant.
That's fine.
So I guess that's my question logistically, in a retail strip, what kind of, and maybe that's an engineer question
That's
as
something
well,
we can
what?
That's something we can look into.
I
and
mean,
if
the
What's needed
reason
there?
we have the loading area back there is where the retail, there's 7,000 feet of retail in that building. They're gonna get deliveries of stuff. If you don't have an area for them, they're gonna block the driveway. Because they're not gonna park behind 1341 and bring stuff all the way around.
Excuse me, John.
1339.
In my experience in developing, they try to make the deliveries based on the customer's needs, 8 to 11. So you're not gonna have a lot of traffic there. They're gonna double park, they're gonna put their hazards on. It's just what they do. They're in and out. They have, 50 stops a day. Amazon has 123 stops a day. They're in and out. Are they gonna block someone from time to time? I'm sure. Someone's gonna beat the horn. They're gonna block them. But we could 100%, Ms. Maddox, take that spot out.
I'm not sure that's the way, but I'm just putting it out there as a question. Is that something that
I
is
think it's something we can
a
look
safety
into.
thing? Is it worth considering?
It's something we can look into further.
At least-
absolutely.
Explore it.
And if that'll make, Mr. Crosby's tenant feel more comfortable, we're open to that 100%. We want everyone to get along. We want everyone to park, where they want. And one of the first things I did when we looked at this last year was made sure there was cross easements for this very reason. I can't put a fence up, they can't put a fence up. So it helps everyone. The big mound of dirt there for 20 years. This is gonna be, we believe a beautiful project. And I think something that the town can be proud of, running into a resident, Stop and Shop, and saying you approved it. I mean, this isn't, we don't take this lightly. This is a big financial undertaking, and we're all in.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you all for your time.
Are there any other questions?
Any questions from the public who are here? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. AJ Miller, 109 Cottage Road, so I live directly behind 1339. I've got 3 small kids. I've got a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 9-year-old, and I hear a lot of conversations about, okay, well, we won't route them to a package store, we'll just route them on a Cottage Road. And my 4-year-old plays in the driveway, right? Like, I don't want more delivery trucks than are already there because of the other buildings. Getting routed onto Cottage Road. It's an extremely small road. You already have to pull up onto the grass just to pass people if your vehicles are larger. So it's not designed for large vehicles. We see a lot of pain with the Wellington now, and just all of their delivery trucks up and down. We had to call the police because they were blocking the school bus from coming to pick up our child, right? So like we worry about stuff like this. It's a big concern. This is a transition zone. So I'd like the commission just to consider there are residential houses here too. This is not just a commercial space. I think what the Dowlers did when they built their building, they were very considerate. There's nothing on the backs of the buildings. So there's nobody viewing onto Cottage Road. It's all blank wall. They put 30-foot tall pine trees to block those views, right? So we were speaking about the privacy here. We're about to put residential units, someone's gonna be standing 30 feet up in their apartment, staring down into our bedroom windows, and it really concerns us. So I think if we reconsider, the look of what we already see in those buildings, they're beautiful brick buildings, they're 2 stories. If you looked at that view, I mean, I don't know how you saw it, but I saw it like small building, giant, massive unit, right? So I get that you're trying to make money. I get that you're trying to maximize the profit you can make out of the building. But this is a small beach town. This is not a town where you can build just and pack as much as you possibly can into every square foot. It's not the way that we operate. So I'm really concerned about this development, the way that it's structured right now. Because I don't think it fits in. I don't think it's providing the privacy to the residential people. I don't think the height is appropriate. I appreciate the 4 foot kind of in the middle, but not on the ends. But that's it sounds like it's just sort of a light toss to the real concern that we have that, you know, we're building a much taller building and they want to build a 41-foot building and put a 6-foot fence on the street side. And what we're going to see is a massive complex. We're very concerned about that. The last thing I will say, I appreciate they want to add housing. It seems like everybody wants to add housing right around us. So when I moved in 12 years ago, there was the 10 or 12 units over at, 1343. If this building goes through and the Wellington goes through, that jumps to 64 units. So we go from 12 to 64 in an 8-mile radius. That doesn't feel like we're really diversifying the lots around the town. It feels like we're just consolidating a ton of apartments in one area, and it's really negatively impacting the residential folks that are there as well. The last thing that I'll say is that we talked when the vets came in about our concerns with the lighting. They were able to put timers onto the parking lot. So at a certain hour, 8 p.m. or so, I think they were able to turn them off. It's going to be a lot harder to do this because now you've got people living there, right?
This is the new vet.
The new vet, yeah. So we talked to ACA and they were supportive of the idea that all the parking lot lights go off at night and this becomes, you know,
Because they're business hours.
Right.
just during business hours and slightly after business hours. We understand there's some businesses that work a little later. They had some concerns about their staff coming in and out. So we made an accommodation, say, well, till 8 p.m. You can keep the lights on and get your staff enough time to work a little later. But by 8 p.m., you know, my kids can go to bed. Now the neighborhood's quiet again, right? And you can see, you know, that sort of peaceful tranquility that we've had there ever since I moved in. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I have a few comments followed by a question. KJ Monroe, 70 Harkness Drive, Madison. I've been a resident in Madison for 50 years. I've served on many committees, wetlands, adjunct of planning and zoning, police commission, strategic planning. I've sat where you guys are numerous nights and stayed awake or tried to stay awake. Anyway, I don't know anybody here except the architect, John Matthews. It happens to be that we served in the Rotary Club together for many years. And I think we were good members in good standing. But anyway, I'm in favor of this. I learned about this project through Bob Dollar. I had lunch with Bob Dollar about maybe 3 or 4 months ago. He was visiting from Florida. And so as a concerned resident, I wanted to come and speak in favor of this project. It's the last time I sat on a committee and listened to anything was about the racquetball court. When we tore down the racquetball court to put up the Dollar property, there certainly was a good move, wasn't it? And there was a lot of talk about that. But I'm glad to see that these 2 vacant lots that have been sitting there forever, it seems, are being developed. And I know that the adjacent businesses on the same side of the street and across the street are in favor of this because they think they're going to bring in a lot of money to Madison with business and that sort of thing. They also am in favor of these condominiums. I'm a bachelor here in the last few years, and I'm living in a big house. I'd like to have more places like this become available. We do really have a shortage of units like this that are not available in Madison presently. The more the better. But there's, this will also counterbalance the affordable units that are to the rear on Cottage Street, these new units that are coming in, even though there are not that many of them. So I guess that's pretty much what I was thinking about. The one other very important thing is this 20 to 25 million tax base that's going to come to the town. With all the disharmony going on in the town lately over the Academy Street property and that sort of thing, it's great to have some money coming in rather than money going out. So that's the key to success for a happy treasurer, a happy town treasurer. So I guess my question would be, do you have any estimate as to when the committee will take a vote on this?
I think we're hoping to in May, if we get all the information together by then and see the final revisions.
Sometime in May.
May 16th would be our next
I'll
meeting.
mention that to Bob.
Excuse me, sir, can we put you aside for that comment now? If I could just make one comment, Ms. Snow,
Sure.
with respect to the neighbor cottage. I will talk to the architect how we can maybe raise the windows. We can do different lighting there, cut off lighting. So I'll bring it up to John. I certainly appreciate your concerns. And one of the things John Cunningham mentioned was the trees that the Darrows, I believe, planted. And like you said, they're 30 feet, although we're 11 feet past that number. So I'd be open if we could get some mature trees with respect to the budget, if we could help out. And I think it's very hard there, John's last meeting, to dig in between those rooted trees. But we'll do everything we can to help alleviate those concerns. And feel free to call Mr. Matthews, and please come to the next meeting. And everything's online, so we'll take that comment and we'll address it. Right. And with respect to the cars, excuse me, maybe we can not only have signage, we can train the drivers as they deliver. Typically, it's the same driver in that route to please exit Boston Post Road. You know, make that turn at the gate for 1339 businesses, and please exit Boston Post Road. You know, not an exit. Maybe we could do some signage that educate people not to go on Cottage Road.
Yeah.
You know, we can't stop everyone, but again, we can make a point, and we can certainly put that in the leases. You know, all these points are taken very seriously. We could put that in the master lease that says your drivers have to exit Boston Post Road, which can go east or west. So I appreciate that. I have 2 young grandchildren, so I appreciate that concern. Thank you very much.
Just I want to just submit this letter, a letter of support from Tom Clancy. So I brought extra copies, but I'll leave them here for.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
We have
Madam Chair.
Dan, Dan Buckley has raised his hand, so Dan, if you can hear us.
Did you allow him to talk?
Tom Clancy.
There you go. Dan, you can unmute now.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah, so my name is Dan Buckley. I'm a homeowner at 103 Cottage Road. And I just want to reiterate some of the points that the other resident on Cottage Road made. I just want to again remind the committee that Cottage Road is a very small road. I know this property is a post road address, but the speed limit is 25. I really appreciate the other council members' deep concern about traffic, especially when you start to stack all the potential traffic increases that are going to come as a result of the new development underway currently, as well as the other ones planned. So this is a community that, you know, we're a beach community down here, and that's why this is a great property. Everybody's looking forward to using it. But there's a lot of people that are walking this street. There are people that are biking this street. This is a direct access to the beach and Hammonasset State Park, as well as Salt Meadow. There are crosswalks being planned. So I just want to reiterate that and remind the board of the character of the neighborhood. The second point I want to just raise is that I do want to request that the board not approve these variances for either height or ratio. And that is because of the character of the neighborhood. And again, the other points that I raised. The regulations are in place for a purpose. And, once you start creepage, it becomes very easy to allow it to happen in other places. One point I will make is that the elevation graphic that I believe Mr. Matthews presented doesn't show the other smaller residences directly adjacent to the other properties. And so again, to the other residence member that spoke, this is going to be a huge monstrosity at this exceedingly high level that is going to be suddenly planted in this midst. So I just want to make that comment regarding the elevation graphic that was showed. And then the last point I want to ask, and this is more of a question, and full disclosure, I am also a member of the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I don't see any design specifications for sidewalks along the post road that allow for pedestrian transportation. A lot of mention was talked about traffic. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we're always talking about traffic related to cars. But that's not always the case, folks. Safe Streets and the Complete Streets program, which Madison has agreed to, really asks for consideration in anything to include access for pedestrians, as well as bikes, as well as carriages, baby carriages, and other handicapped vehicles or handicapped transportation modes. So I don't see a sidewalk being added to this. This is a bus stop area. There will be crosswalks there. So I think it's another consideration that absolutely must be included before any consideration of this is approved. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'll answer any questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you. All right.
Can I speak at some points? Yeah, I mean,
More.
that's all right. I won't take too long because I've heard some comments from the developer that was may accommodate some of our concerns, but I'd like to make a brief presentation if I could. I'm Attorney Thomas Crosby. I'm at 23 Boston Street in Guilford. I represent the neighbor. You've already, I guess, anticipated perhaps some of my comments based on the questions that I asked the traffic engineer. But I guess what I wanted to start out with is just we are aware, and we certainly concede the fact. I'll just maybe hand these all out to you at one time, might be easier. We're aware, and we certainly concede that there is a cross-easement agreement. Although the cross-easement agreement doesn't mention in any particular respect the commercial traffic, on our property, on their property. And again, I want to respectfully respond in a positive way to what was suggested by signage and the possibility of the elimination of the loading area, loading, unloading, because I think that's a major concern for my client. I guess I'll start off just basically just saying, that HPS is the owner of the property next door. That's 1333, and HPS is west of 1339. So it's that one building that particularly concerns us. We have the Hammonasset Packet liquor store. There's obviously a concern we have about access and ingress and egress. And what I wanted to really make as a solid point is that this was the subject of an approval by you. And the third exhibit I put in the packet is your Town of Madison applications from 2005. And that has a series of conditions. And I put behind it the actual special permit. So you had both approval documents that were relevant at the time this was created. And I know that Attorney Beatty introduced a survey map. I think what I wanted to point out in terms of that is that the fact is that the plan at that time had not only the access that we're talking about on Boston Post Road, but it had two curb cuts on Cottage Road. And I know the Cottage Road people aren't going to be happy to hear that, but that's the way it was. And that's why we signed the access agreement, the mutual agreement to share parking on both sides and to let them and to have eventually someday a new curb cut on Boston Post Road. that was because we thought, and I think the plan is very clear, that there would be ingress and egress through, off to Cottage Road. One of the exhibits that I did include there, and I'm trying to get it out so I don't spend too much time, waste too much of your time, but it shows, I guess if you just look at map 4844, which is in your package, and 4844, although it's not exactly like the survey map, it's almost essentially the same as that survey map. And this is a folded document. It's got 4844. It says, 8/23/06. It was recorded. And if you fold it open, you'll see very clearly that there was a way in, which is going to be this new curb cut between 1333 and 1339, or shared on the boundary of those two properties. I don't know exactly where to stand here to make this helpful to people who are watching at home, but sorry, folks at home. But the bottom line is that there was a way out, and that's not there anymore. So now we're talking about, and again, I think that some of the remarks about signage and possibly eliminating that loading area, that could help us, because we would have anticipated that the traffic flow would have been people making a left turn coming from downtown Madison, people making a right turn coming downtown, Clinton. They're going to pull in that new curb cut, and they would go in and access these two new buildings, the 1339 and the 1341. I think today, although it's been a little confusing, I think they said that there'll be some two-way traffic in a widened area behind. But when my client originally countersigned this application, because she was asked to do so, she was presented a plan, a rendering like this. She was presented something saying, well, would you agree to what you agreed to 20 years ago? And I would say also parenthetically that Miss Mason, who's here tonight, her husband, Jim Mason, who had an office on Cottage Road, who was an accountant, he was the managing member of this LLC. He passed away sadly last fall, and so it's been Denise Mason, who's here tonight. It's been her, burden, if you will, to try to figure out and navigate what is she obligated to do and what is she not obligated to do. Now, I will mention just to step back one more point, is that if there's any dispute, and I know lawyers love to dispute. I guess they say, when there's one lawyer in town, there's no business. When there are two lawyers, there's a lot of business. But, when lawyers dispute about what a document means, your agreement or your approval actually addresses that in item 5. It says at the end, as the commission deems appropriate for legal adequacy and consistency with the terms of the approval of commission's counsel. So they're asking that all proposed and required easements be submitted and reviewed by your counsel to make sure that you understand whether or not this is, you're using a next door neighbor's property to develop these other two properties. And I think that brings one more point to the parking. Why not make a total? Why doesn't somebody sum up all the parking spaces at 1333, all the parking spaces at 1339, and all the parking spaces at 1341, and then figure out the regulations, since there's this shared agreement? Because on the one hand, although it's a valid point to say, well, you guys can park over there and we can park over there, but there's got to be a universe of available spaces given the amount of the square footage and the uses, whether they be commercial or residential. So I think that analysis hasn't been done. As I do also respectfully think that the traffic engineer had not considered the way this traffic flow is going to be. And again, I respectfully submit that if we can eliminate that loading area, even though we may not be able to get them to follow the terms of the agreement in 2006, which is to have a Cottage Road exit, maybe we can work something out. And so we're open to sitting down and talking to them to see if that can be done. On the same token, I think that one of the things about the traffic is that this has got to be reviewed by the DOT, or it's at least someone's got to make an opinion whether it does or isn't supposed to. What I've given you also in your packet are 2 letters from the DOT. One of them is dated December 3, 2009, and the other one's dated December 18, 2009. One attaches a 2005 state DOT plan review, and one attaches a revision to that. That's a little more recent. I think it's in November of 2009. Those would seem to be, let me strike that. those needed to be looked at by the traffic engineer. I mean, if you're gonna do this project, you gotta look at where you came from to figure out where you're going. I mean, that's just common sense. And so I think that, now that those two plans agreed that two Cottage Road exits or entrances were part of that original DOT approval, now that one of them's not, I think that's gotta be analyzed. And of course, that's something that, the traffic expert could do. They could figure out, well, even though that's been eliminated, here's the way it could flow. Again, these are narrow, corridors. And I'm concerned, as I said in the beginning, of my questions, we're concerned primarily with the traffic around our building. It's common sense. You're a guy with a truck and you're supposed to deliver, and I think it was said by the developer, you got how many deliveries a day? You're looking at your watch, you're pulling in, that's why we would really like to see that loading area not be in the back of that building, because we know, and he knows, and even though you're shaking your head no, John, that they're gonna come around the liquor store. If I'm in a hurry and I'm trying to get somewhere, and let's make another point. This is Hammonasset. In the summer, there's a lot of people there, right? We don't need to live here to know that. And guess what? A lot of them want to go to the liquor store. So as a consequence of that volume, whether you can put that in numbers and data points, we know that that's going to be a lot of people that are still trying to pull into our liquor store. We do have one entrance and exit, but it would be hell for us to have traffic coming around that building and coming out our kind of entrance. So respectfully, I think that this is something that hasn't really been feathered out, but maybe between now and the next hearing, the traffic expert can look at that. I think it's a question of safety. I think it's a question of density.
Talking to each other?
We started talking today, and I'm willing to, I'm gonna take the invitation that, I thought today when they suggested the signage, I thought they were gonna also, I thought the plan we were dealing with, to be honest, was the plan that I received, that my client received in February of 2024, which had Cottage Road with a gate that was temporary, would be open. I guess that's changed. I guess a lot's changed. I guess things are changing, each time we come here. So I think given we could get our engineer, and I have Mr. Garcia, John Paul Garcia's analysis there, that's also part of your package. Perhaps Mr. Garcia and, the developer and their engineer, we could sit down between now and then and see if this signage slash, loading area could become a solution so that we're not in here, loggerhead heads over that.
Great,
Okay, thank you very much.
thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I say one thing?
Really quick.
Madam Chair? All the restaurants are closed, don't worry about it. With respect to, again, back to the parking, and can I address Mr. Crosby's concerns to the chair?
Well, that's why I was hoping that you are in communication with each other.
I haven't been, Mr. Beatty has,
Yeah.
Attorney Beatty. May I address Mr. Crosby through the chair?
Sure.
Mr. Crosby, could you get us a number also with respect to your traffic and your deliveries? Because I know the package store business, my family's been involved, there's a lot of deliveries, different providers, and that would be very helpful to us.
At least 5 a day.
Okay,
Ms. Mason.
yes, I met Ms.
Why
Mason,
don't
thank
you all
you.
have this conversation
Well,
among yourselves?
right,
And then come back to us and hopefully you'll have some resolution. That'd be awesome.
Well, I want to put it on the record, but if you want me to do it outside
We'll
of the
put it
building,
in
I will.
writing. It's been a long night.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
As this is our 30 days in of the hearing, in order to accommodate continuing the hearing, the applicant would need to grant an extension to the commission to continue that.
You need a letter.
You can follow it up with a letter, but just at least
Yeah,
an
my
acknowledgement.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you all again for being here, and everyone that turned out.
It was
Thank
very
you.
productive, so
Thank you.
thanks for that.
I know, it's, everyone's volunteer position and time for your day, thank you.
Okay, could I get a motion then to continue this public hearing with their approval? May 16th?
Yeah.
Second. Any further discussion?
That was the 16th?
All right, we're out there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
So Aaron, the pending application.
Yes.
24-09, 2222 Bear Road.
There's a request to table this discussion and possible likely action to the May 2nd meeting.
Make a motion for that.
Yes.
Do we need to bring the stuff back?
May 2nd.
Right.
No.
Um,
Yes, you should take it.
Okay,
Should we
so
bring
we
it back
received, we
next
set a public hearing for
Right, I'll be happy to.
24-11.
Hold on.
No? Got a motion. Set that. Thank you, Bob. Another second. Mike Pugga, discussion, all in favor, so that's set for May 16th.
Great.
I'm gonna try to put that one first on the agenda. That's a fairly
Yeah, that should be a
straightforward one ahead of.
24-13, 27 Greenville Lakes and 43 Boston Post Road. We'd like to set a public hearing and they've requested June 6th, is that right?
Yes, the first meeting in June. I think that is June 6th, correct?
It is June 6th. Got a motion?
Yes.
Next one. Discussion, all in favor, that's for June 6th. 24-15, 251 Boston Post Road. This is a modification, and because it is to the regulations as a PDD, we need to set a public hearing. So can I have a motion to set that for the 6th? And
It's
second.
gonna be a long night.
Amendment or modification of regulations.
So, right, the master plan is being modified, which was part of the zone boundary map amendment, so it requires a public hearing to come back and change that master plan.
And then following up on that, the site plan application.
Signage, training the drivers.
So that would follow, but we don't need to set a public hearing.
Correct, the site plan and the coastal site plan do not require a public hearing.
Great, okay, and then administrative approval for 24-1295 Legend Hill Road. This was action that was already taken by the zoning enforcement officer. Erin, do you want to explain anything more?
Just, so a minor site plan modification, there is that provision under section 29. And it has parameters of changes over, under a certain size. If they've been reviewed by ACCA, it can be approved administratively by the administrator, which is the zoning enforcement officer. And so Maria did go through that process. This is essentially for a rear deck, but the entire Legend Hill development is a special exception. There's site plan modifications if anyone has any changes. So in this case, those minor modifications work and you don't have to be burdened with that small scale review.
Okay, so now we know that exists.
And we are required to notify you anytime we take an administrative approval. That's why you're seeing it on the agenda.
I think we would like to encourage more of this.
I know, does he?
You can consider that in your next zoning regulation
Updating
update.
zoning regulations.
For these type of.
All right, approval of meetings.
There you go.
Secretary John Dusa, this is April 4th, 2024. regular meeting.
Sure, April 4th meeting, members present, Reinhardt, O'Connor, Snow, Bugdale, Rubin, Peckercorn, Downs, Morgan, and Duza. Motion for approval. Second.
I'll second.
And any comments, edits?
Good.
I didn't see any corrections. Vote to approve. Great.
Thank you. I have no remarks, maybe POCD update. Quickly, we're going to give a brief presentation to the Board of Selectmen. I think Bob and I are going. That was April 29th, Monday, it's Monday. And with asking them to focus on the implementation chart, which asks the Board of Selectmen to assume responsibility for many of these things. So we'll see what kind of response we get. And then earlier we were discussing that on July 11th, 7/11 is when the public hearing will take place to present and get public feedback.
Good. Very good.
Erin, anything else?
Nope. I have nothing.
Not, could I have a motion to adjourn? John Morgan.
Yeah.
Second, Discussion, all in favor? All right, adjourned at 9:14.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Definitely would lead
We
now.
did get a lot done.
Yeah, I will miss both meetings in June.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.